Hello there. In this video we're going to take a look at this boring beige box that is my Pentium 233 MMX system. Let's take a look inside. So here we are on the inside of the case. It's got plenty of room for hard drive options. I got the hard drive right here. It's got space for two more. It was a pretty fascinating case. I believe this is by Open or Nlight. I don't remember which one. But it's a good case nonetheless, even though it was a little dusty and dirty. Got a Vibra 16 sound card in here. Wasn't really interested in, perfect DOS sound because this isn't a DOS system. This is running Windows 98 Gold, or the first version of Windows 98. I did add some USB to the system since 98 supports USB quite nicely. And we have a 3COM, I think this is a 3C905BTX, if I'm not mistaken. And I have either a Promise or, yeah, that's got to be a Promise Ultra ATi 100. And it's got an ATi, what is this? Was this a Rage All-In-Wonder or Radeon All-In-Wonder? I'm pretty sure it's a Rage All-In-Wonder. And I was able to locate a PS2 for this AT system. I love using PS2 mice. I don't really like serial mice, primarily because there are no laser serial mice, and I love laser mice or optical mice. And I did install all 64 megs, not that you can see very well. It's all the way there in the back. Let's see if I can... Well, you all know what RAM looks like. This is 64 megs of EDO Sims sitting back there. And then we have the aftermarket Cooler Master. I think this was actually for a socket 370. Works perfectly on my socket 7. So, without further ado, let's boot up Windows 98 and take a look at the system. Okay, got the case cover back on. Powering up the system now. I believe this was a Shuttle Hot 555 motherboard, I think, based upon that BIOS string there, using the 430VX chipset. Ultra 133 TX2 with a very fast 10 gig hard drive, which is overkill for a system of this age, but I like fast disk subsystems. I've been experimenting a lot with SCSI. And, well, I have so many UDMA 100 and 133 cards that it doesn't necessarily make sense to turn everything SCSI, but SCSI is quite interesting, quite fast. And it's finding my monitor. Plug and play monitor. Yeah, go ahead and search, plug and play monitor. Finished. The sound is deafening. So this is my Pentium Classic, Pentium MMX. I do have a separate Pentium Classic non-MMX in my collection. I wanted one of each. The Pentium MMX was interesting because I feel like Intel tried making it look like the MMX sped things up just because of it having MMX technology, which very few applications actually took advantage of. But what made the MMX chip faster than non-MMX chips was the doubling of the internal L1 cache. They went from 8 kilobytes to 16 kilobytes. Let's take a quick look here. I think I have some benchmarking utilities on here. See if we can get an overall idea. Or maybe I don't. Well, we can always use SciSoft Sandra. I thought I had something on here like, 3D Bench or something. Let's take a quick look at the overall, what it detects on the system. Runs at a 233 megahertz, estimated to be a performance rating or a Pentium rating of 233. It's got ISA, PCI. It doesn't actually have SCSI. This is its misdetection of the UDMA 133 card. It actually shows up in Device Manager as a SCSI controller, but it is most definitely a Promise Ultra 133. I installed 128 megs. I thought I only had 64 because you can only cache 64. So this generally is not advised because anything that's above the cacheable range of 64 megs, it'll run, but there's 64 megs of RAM here that's not being cached by the cache. And so it runs at raw memory speed instead of cached memory speed. And now, of course, that's actually faster than using the swap file. If I only had 64 megs of RAM and I had to rely on the swap file a lot, uncached RAM is still faster. So from that perspective, it makes a little bit of sense to go ahead and have more RAM if you truly need it. And since we are running Windows 98 Gold, 4/10/1998, it makes sense to have a little bit more than 64 megs of RAM. As you can see here, the physical memory free is just under 30 megs of RAM. That's how much Windows 98 ends up taking up. And the reason why I went with Windows 98 for this build is because Windows 95 has buggy and limited support for MMX chips. So in my opinion, anything that has MMX on it should really be running a minimum operating system of Windows 98 if you want proper support for it. Windows 95 does list MMX support in like 95C, I think it is, with the USB supplement, and I think they'd even incorporated AGP in there. But you're better off just going with Windows 98. It has slightly higher system requirements, but it's a lot better than running 95, in my opinion. Let's see, does it actually recognize it? Holco Shuttle. Yeah, this is a Shuttle Hot 555 motherboard with the VX chipset. I'm wondering if I should lower this down to 64 megs of RAM, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. And then, of course, system does not support memory error correction. Typical warnings from SciSoft. All memory slots are full. You won't be able to upgrade. The chipset may not be able to cache all your physical memory installed. Yada, yada, yada. This is an All-in-Wonder Radeon. I thought it was the All-in-Wonder Rage. Radeon 7200 with 32 megs of video RAM on there. It's actually a very fast performing video card. Let's take a look at the CPU benchmark, see what it shows. So compared to a Pentium 3, my system is rather slow. Compared to, say, a Pentium 266, mine's just about in line. Slightly slower than expected floating point unit, but nonetheless, still pretty performance. And what's interesting here is the IDT WinChip 2. I have one of these, but I don't have it in a system. I have the chip itself. But it runs pretty close to a Pentium performance, but it severely lacks in the floating point area. Let's take a look at the multimedia benchmark. And this is the benchmark that actually takes advantage of like MMX, 3D Now, and SSC. And as you can see, it's blown away by faster systems like the Pentium 3500 or the K6 3500. This is literally running in half the speed. It doesn't have floating point 3D now or SSC, so it's running on raw floating point. MMX was not a floating point. It used floating point registers, but it only did integer math. It's not streaming. Matrix multiplication tables for doing integer math utilizing the floating point unit. So to my knowledge, you couldn't mix code. You couldn't actually use MMX code together with floating point without suffering a massive performance penalty from all the context switching, having to save and reload states of the floating point registers. Let's see. Don't care about the... can show you what the UDMA 133 looks like in speed. I'm not sure if a Pentium 233 can take advantage of UDMA 133 speeds. I think the drive in there is only UDMA 100 anyways. And really, the UltraDMA specification not only specified max theoretical throughput, and it was typically referring to the speed between the drive and the controller. It isn't necessarily what you get from the rest of the system. More often than not, most UDMA drives did not actually achieve 100 megabits per second speeds in everyday use, because spinning Rust drives, as they call them these days, just didn't have the performance to saturate a 100 megabit connection consistently. It can burst, but it generally was far below that. Though to be fair, SCSI was the same. SCSI only talked about the connection speed between the host controller and the drive, and most drives at the time did not do that speed consistently because, again, spinning Rust, spinning drives due to physics, the natural rotational speed of the drive, it has to wait for the data to keep coming around and around and around. So a faster spinning drive was often always better than simply having a faster connection. So getting like a SCSI 15,000 RPM drive, you could get a pretty fast drive there. But there were still limitations. It still couldn't sustain fast transfer speeds. It wasn't until solid-state drives came along that it started saturating these connections. And there we go. This drive is just about as fast as this UDMA 8.4 gig, which is very similar to what I have. I've got a 10 gig in this drive, although it comes out to 9.3 binary value. Memory benchmark, I believe this is going to end up coming to a lower value because half the memory isn't cached. I'm not familiar with the specifics on how Sysoft actually runs their memory benchmark, whether they call for uncached memory speeds to get raw memory speed, or whether it just utilizes the operating system APIs and tries to get cached memory speed. I'm not exactly sure how it was written. But I'd be curious. Let's take a look at what it comes up with. whatever it's doing, it's maxing out the CPU there. And I don't know how much it affects benchmarks like this, but I've always liked to set a minimum swap file size. I don't set a maximum, it can grow if it needs to, but I like to set a minimum. That way, if for some reason the physical memory is all used up, it doesn't have to spend CPU cycles creating the swap file and then growing it based upon current usage. I like to have a minimum swap file set up already for that, especially since, as you saw when we first booted up, we had less than 30 megabytes free. That can easily be eaten up by a game or two. So current performance is, again, pretty close and in line with the Pentium 266 using a TX chipset. It's only using 64 megs of VDO, whereas I'm using 128 megs of VDO. And it doesn't look like the uncached memory affected it too much. It might have affected a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't know if these lower numbers are because the processor is a little slower than a 266, or if it's because I have a VX chipset compared to this TX chipset. I'm unsure. It runs about as fast as this IDT Win chip here. 98, 95, yeah. So my 233 runs about as fast as the WinChip 266 in memory speed, which is quite interesting. Again, I don't know how much the uncached speed made a difference there. So that's my Pentium 233 MMX. There's really not too much else to show off. Everybody's played around with Windows 98 machines. Windows 95 and 98, and particularly 98 Second Edition, seems to be the most popular go-to OS for retro machines. People seem to really love that era. But this is my entry into that era. This is one of my machines for it. I like playing some legacy games, as you can see, just giving a quick show of some of the games I like to play on this particular system. Most of them run fine. I think like Risk 2 actually runs a little slow on this particular system, even though it meets the system requirements. But it's a nice little system. It's fun to play. And it does what I need it to for the era of which I'm using it in. So it's a fascinating little system, and there's not really much else to talk about. So if you found this video fascinating or entertaining, go ahead and hit that like button for me, please. I'd really appreciate it. That really encourages me to keep doing more content. I'm hoping people enjoy what I put out. And I normally do videos like this. I'm currently showing off my collection of PCs, talking about what's unique about each particular system. It's unique to my collection. It's not necessarily unique to the rest of the world. I don't have too many very rare parts. I'm not a rarities collector. I just had specific things that I wanted to collect for my museum, and I'm showing them off in my video series. So if you like those kind of videos, I'd appreciate if you'd subscribe. That would really help the channel grow, and would really also encourage me to keep that there's interest in this kind of content, that people want to see more. I intend on doing some programming videos, maybe writing up a function or a class here or there. Maybe people might be interested in something like that. I also do video games. I will do an entire playthrough. I have a couple of those up on my channel already. Play both old and new games, so if you're interested in seeing anything like that, you can look forward to seeing some of that on my channel. So once again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.